Good afternoon. I often tell people that give me a $30 million automation system, I can make it work. Give me a couple $1,000s worth of office equipment and it will beat me every time. Clickers typically fall into that category. So we'll see how this goes. A little background or a little preface to my conversation here today. It's just so I can set the stage. What we're going to talk about is not theoretical. It's in practice. It's in production critical environments right now. It's running for about 2 years. So everything that I'm going to talk about is not what I want to do. It's what we're doing and what we have done. As my colleagues mentioned, security is it's an ever-changing and ever-moving goal. To get to 100% is never going to happen. The best you can do is take a big bite out of where you want to go. And, you know, it's a law of diminishing returns, right? The first 80% is the least expensive. After that, every percent gets incrementally more expensive to get to that ever-moving 100% mark. So I'd like to get there someday, and I'd like to tell my executive management that we'll get there someday. I've tried to explain to them that'll never happen, and they don't quite understand that theory, but I continue to work on it. So when you talk about security, you may have heard this before, but assessment is critical. And I tell people we don't build rockets. You might. And what I mean by that is what your needs for security are different than my needs for security. So American Axle Manufacturing, what do? We build driveline components. So what's going to happen if somebody gets in and makes one of those not work somehow? You're going to be really ticked about 9 miles from the dealership. Okay? Our stuff doesn't go boom. So that means my assessment is going to be different than your assessment. So don't listen to those folks that come in and give the assessment, because there is no the assessment. It will be unique to your organization, and it will be unique to your needs. The question is, when you start down the road of ICS security, where do you start? Is it heads or tails? I mean, you can flip a coin, but the problem is there aren't 7-sided coins. So picking a place to start is kind of the question. So I'm going to talk about where we started. So we said there's no single solution. We're going to pick a couple of directions, and we're going to approach the problem. First problem we said was intrusion prevention. We need to keep unwanted activity out. Be that our own people making inadvertent mistakes, which is the largest part of the problem. There aren't a lot of people that want to hack in and whack an axle. We're just not that exciting, okay? Not to say it's not going to happen, because there are other business alternatives that people aren't aware of. Because if they can take a line down for 5 days, how much money does that cost in terms of production? That's a significant amount. So would somebody pony up a little bit of money to get their line back faster? Maybe, right? So they don't always have to affect your product, but maybe affect your ability to create your product to be a problem. So 2 things we looked at was removing vulnerable assets from the controls networks and protecting our devices with industrial security appliances using deep packet inspection. I won't say that a lot during this conversation. I've pulled some of the tech out of this particular discussion, but DPI is critical to anything that you might want to do relative to industrial security. The other thing that I don't hear enough conversation about in the industrial security realm is detection and recovery. If we agree that we won't stop every attack, anybody in here think we'll stop every attack? Raise your hand. If you think we'll stop every attack, raise your hand. We won't laugh for long, and we won't laugh at all. It won't ever happen. You're never going to stop every attack. If that's true, if that's a true statement, and you will not, in fact, stop every attack, why then is there not a larger discussion on detection and recovery? What's the value proposition? If somebody takes down an I/O module, how quickly can I recover that I/O module? Is it cheaper to recover it or cheaper to protect it? I'll lay you odds it's cheaper to replace it than it is to protect it. So why aren't we talking about that more? I don't hear a lot of conversation about that in the ICS security world, and I think that we're missing something there. So where did we start? We said we need to assess our current posture. We need to understand where we're at. And based on those 2 things we're looking at, what do we need to affect? We need to define some key objectives. Could we have 20 of them? Oh, absolutely. We could have come up with all sorts of key objectives. I don't know about the rest of you, but in the last few years, automotive hasn't been flush with capital. I know the power guys are, but the automotive guys, we're not flush with capital, right? So I couldn't go after everything. Come on, you guys are supposed to chuckle at that. I always get after the utility guys because they always seem like they're flush with money. Automotive, not so much. So we had to pick 4, 5, right, and go after those key goals. Number 1, protect the manufacturing controls networks, in our case it's Ethernet IP, from the enterprise networks, which we consider the untrusted network, and they from us. I can tell you that they consider us untrusted too. I'm not entirely sure why, but I do know for a fact that they consider us untrusted. Go figure. So it's a mutual agreement. So that was key goal number 1. How to do that? Well, we have a highly segregated plant floor environment. All of our stuff is broken up into very small systems. And we chose to delineate our systems between our firewall, which does industrial DPI of Ethernet IP and multiple other things that we do with it, as well as certificate-based authentication to get through it, and their systems and their IT firewalls. So we have 2 different firewalls, 2 different OSs with 2 different configurations, back-to-back, theoretically back-to-back. The picture's a little bit more simple than how it actually works, but in general, we've isolated them from us and us from them, okay? Key objective number 2, secure and safe remote safe support capability. Everybody needs to be able to support their facilities. Our corporate team needs to be able to support facilities globally. I need to be able to sit in my hotel like I did last night about 11:30 and log into a manufacturing facility in Three Rivers, Michigan, connect to a PLC on a laser welding cell, and help that engineer troubleshoot a very tricky problem, right? Which I actually did last night at about 11:30 at night. Okay, so I connected from the hotel. A lot of times when I do this, I actually set my laptop up here and I'll connect to a PLC somewhere globally and go through the multiple forms of authentication necessary. Right? You have to have the proper set of security certificates. You have to be in the proper OU group. You have to log into your laptop. Your laptop has to be part of the AM domain. You go through 2 layers of SSL VPN. So I can go through how it works. Worked very well, right? Matter of fact, it works so well, I was telling Sid at lunch, one of the benefits of it is our guys used to walk up to a plant and they'd plug their cable into the port on the outside of the panel, plug their laptops into troubleshoot or look at something. We actually have 100% wireless throughout all of our facilities. So now they fire up the VPN connection for the controls VPN connection. They remote into the Zenwall on the line. It puts them out onto the area they're supposed to get to. They can manage the switches or log into the PLC. And the benefit I get is that security appliance is pushing all of their activity to a 30 terabyte syslog server, where I've got an Orion supervisory system that's parsing all of that activity out and logging it and sending out reports. So I know when they're in, how long they're in, and what they're doing. Okay? So that was a benefit I hadn't counted on, because it's more convenient for them to do it. Didn't even realize that. They don't even have to have a cable. So if they needed to go to the other side of the line, they don't actually have to pick it up, walk around, and plug in. They just pick a different connection point from the Wi-Fi. Control and track supplier access. Anybody in here an end user, manufacturer, end user? I know some of the guys there. Biggest problem, one of our biggest problems today is we have fewer resources than we did a couple of years ago. I have maybe 6 controls engineer in a north plant, and I used to have 12 or 15. Doesn't mean I have fewer projects. Doesn't mean I have fewer installs. So whereas I used to be able to take one controls engineer and send him with supplier XYZ out to a line, he can't go sit with him all day now. He escorts him out. 30 minutes later, he gets a call from the front gate. Well, guess what? Supplier JKL is in, and he needs to go out to that line. Can you come get him? So he has to leave, go get that guy, and take him over there. And then maybe bounce between them throughout the remainder of the day. Well, that's a problem for me, because now I have someone in my facility plugging into my stuff, and I don't know what they're doing. In theory, I know what they're doing. I can assume their intentions are good. Is assumption a safe bet? Never. So we've implemented a system with vouchers. Everybody logged into the ARC stuff here, the web, the wireless. right? You connected to the Wi-Fi, you had to put in a passcode, right? In our systems, we use SharePoint. So when we know somebody's coming in, the controls engineer who's asking somebody to come in generates a request in SharePoint. It goes to quality, manufacturing engineering, and controls engineering manager, and they approve it. That generates a voucher. The voucher number is good for 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours, 2 days, however long is necessary. Maybe the guy's coming in for 2 weeks to do a startup. When he brings that guy in, he hands him the voucher. When that guy walks in and plugs into the control panel, that's the locked panel, he plugs into the external Ethernet port. All he has to have on his laptop is DHCP enabled. I don't have to give him an IP address, so I don't have to worry about him picking one randomly, or me assigning one that will knock something offline because one of the guys picked the wrong one. There's nothing like being in production when you make an axle every 10 seconds and the guy picking the one that your PLC wants to use too. That's bad. If you've ever been there and seen things stop fast, lots of robots stopping, lots of equipment stopping fast, none of it's good. This problem solves that. So he logs in, it gives him an IP address, has nothing to do with what's on the line. He opens up, gets this little thing that says additional login is required. He pops up his web browser and he says, look, welcome to the supplier controls login. Please enter your voucher. He puts in the voucher number he was given, and it pushes him onto that small segmented area that he's supposed to be into, and a clock starts. And when his allotted time is done, he'll get a window that says, you're about to be logged out of the system. And what that does is it will boot him off and disconnect him from whatever he's connected to, period. So it pushes him from one VLAN into another. It bridges the two VLANs temporarily while he's allowed in. It breaks that connection when he's done, right? It's a captive portal is what it's called, okay? Now, if he comes back multiple days, the lease on his address is expiring every day, so he has to enter it in every day anyway. He has to keep reusing that voucher. If it's a 4-day voucher, he gets to put it in 4 times, then it expires, it'll never be good again. While he's in, all of his activity is getting pushed up to a 30 terabyte syslog server. I know what he's at, I know what he's doing, okay? That allows me to contain my suppliers. They plug into what we want them to plug into, no more, no less. Now, where does that get a little trickier? If they have to physically open the panels to do electrical work. What is that? Proximity. When I give you proximity, physical proximity to my equipment, all bets are off. I no longer have control, right? That's the one thing you cannot defeat. Physical, unsupervised proximity. All bets are off. Key objective number 4, protect manufacturing systems from malware attack by removing from PCs or isolating them on the controls network and whitelist where applicable. I have been on a mission for the past few years to remove every single PC from our Ethernet IP field bus. I have been 95% successful to date, and I will kill off the last 5% this year. It sounds harsh. I like PCs. I just don't like them there. 2 reasons. One of them was brought up a little while ago, patch management. All of our PCs used to be dual homed. Dual homing a PC is a bad idea. That is a security no-no. So by removing them, I was able to pull one of the 2 NICs out, and I connect them to the AAM network, which is our enterprise network. Guess whose problem patch management just became? Enterprise IT? Controls. It's not on my network. It's not my problem. So I've effectively removed patch management from my list of concerns for 95% of those PCs. It becomes enterprise IT's concern, and they are better suited to manage patching those PCs than we are. Simply put, controls organizations are not optimally suited to manage patching PCs. They are. So let's let them do it. Now, how do they get in? Every one of my security appliances, that ZenWall, has 4 SSL VPN servers. One of them is for unattended applications. If anybody wants to talk in really detail with lots of gory slides and stuff, we can later. I have lots more pictures. Every one of those PCs has a certificate, a security certificate. It's a 128-bit TLS keyed security certificate. It must connect from the AAM network to the AAM side of that ZenWall. It gets authenticated through the Xen wall. The connection is DPI'd for Ethernet IP. It only allows through what is supposed to come through. So for example, it only allows it to get to PLC, whatever the address is, the IP address. Nothing else gets through that connection. You could even fire up RS Logix 5000 and try to log into that PLC. Won't work. You can't connect to it. You can't even see the PLC exists. That application is able to get through RS links to that PLC because all of those rules were learned and understood by that firewall, and it down to the assembly instance level lets that application through. Nothing else gets through. That's the beauty of deep packet inspection. You can use something called stateful inspection until you're blue in the face. It's going to be good to a degree, but it will fail in the end when somebody gets really good and very clever, right? So I pulled them off the network. They have to come in. They have to come in just as secure as anybody else does. So my asset management up in the cloud, it has to come in that same way too. When I log in, I have to come in. Okay? One of my favorite slides, say no to PCs on your field bus. Friends, don't let friends put PCs on controls networks. Right? Yeah. That's my goal. Get them all off of there. Key objective number 5, implement a controls asset management system that creates an audit trail that allows for fast recovery. You know, if I weren't quite so slow, I would have noticed this is all right down there too. There's a nice big screen right down there. Controls, components, and configurations. Right? So we've put in an asset management system, Q1 detailed slide, that so from our VMware server way up at the top, I bet there's a laser on this thing, up there, this thing has the necessary certificates to reach out and touch every one of these things in every plant. Some of these guys reach out and touch 15, 20 of these guys in a plant. And then from there, they're allowed to reach down and touch every one of these controls devices and back them up every night automatically. And we can recover them automatically with a controls engineer. So it comes down every night, and then it does a comparison report, does audit trails when somebody logs into a PLC, down to the changing a comment on a tag. I know what it was and what it is now in infinite detail in real time. Okay? And all of that's done coming through here. There's a VPN server in there again that's deep packet inspection based, TLS keyed. So he's got to have his own unique set of credentials to get through to get to that line. And then I back everything up that way. So that's the summary of the key 5. We've addressed remote support, backup and recovery, supplier access control and tracking, intrusion prevention, and activity logging and audit trail. I've got 35 sites globally. This is deployed. We've deployed this in the last 2 years in all of our major sites. The most recent was Poland, started coming up last week. We architected for this when we moved to our current architecture in about 2007, knowing we were going to do it. We started laying this in about 2012. 2011 was when we started planning and evaluating devices. 2012 is when we started putting the first in. We can lay this level of security into a line that does not have it, but follows our current architecture in less than half of a day, roughly about 2 hours. Right? We can lay this level of security in. So it's been flawless to date. We've had no failures, no issues. Is anything bulletproof? No, but we went from 0 to, and everybody asks me where I get this number. It's arbitrary. 75-80% of where I'd like to be. Okay? That last 20% is going to be painful and expensive. And then it's going to move again, so it'll be 20% again, right? Or 30 or 40 or 50. Now, my random thoughts. I don't know how I'm doing on time, Sid. Random thoughts. 10-cent security model. I am so tired of sitting in rooms and listening to, and I'm going to say suppliers and vendors of products, sitting down with someone who's never heard anything about security before and talking about DMZs and DPIs and ACLs and secure it all and lock it all down. Because you blow their hair back. There's 2 types of controls engineers in the world, those that won't get what you're talking about and will ask you to leave, and those that smell smoke and will ask you to leave. Right? I'm the latter. So if you are a supplier, since most of you didn't raise your hand, don't introduce as the 10-ton security model. We have engineers, we have sites, we have companies who are just looking to make the leap to an Ethernet-based field bus, right? We've just told them that, look, you throw in some switches, you go to Ethernet IP, it's gorgeous, right? Well, what's the value proposition when you come back 3 months later and say, now that we've converted to Ethernet IP, let's talk security because, right, this was this much? Well, now you need security and it's this much. Oh, and you have to manage it, right? So it's a scary proposition for a lot of people, and if you come in with this 10-ton elephant, it's going to take longer to get them where you need them to be. Maybe step one is, let's just talk managed switches. Maybe that's step one. Let's help you along the path of security by how do we get you to unconfigured managed switches? Maybe that's step one, right? Okay, keep that in mind. Do something, a little today, more tomorrow, right? Chew on that elephant a bite at a time. Everybody can eat an elephant, you just can't eat it all at once. I get asked this question a lot, because I actually talk about this a lot. How much security is enough, right? You ever heard that question? Anybody got any answers for that? Who's got an answer? How much security is enough? Anybody? How much is enough? You can't answer. Mr. Industrial Defender, or Mike. Anybody? How much security is enough? Is there an answer for that question? Is there an answer? I argue there is. Whatever you need to mitigate the risk you can't live with. That's the answer. Whatever you need to mitigate the risk you as an organization, an individual, cannot live with. You have to decide what that is. I can't do it for you. The suppliers can't do it for you. ARC can't do it for you. None of the other organizations can do it for you. You as an organization need to decide what is enough and what is sufficient. Can you lean on these great organizations for help? Absolutely. There are many, including ARC, who are doing just that by putting on this type of event. At the end of the day, you have to decide what's enough and what you can live with. Okay? And then my last slide is I can make up answers to almost any questions. But one more thing that I would add, if I have just a moment, is as I watch and I talk about security over the last, couple of years, really. I've been doing this for a while. I've been doing this for 20-some years. But for the last couple of years, I've been having a hard time wrapping my head around categorizing the people I watch. Because I watch a lot of people who have no vested organization in that they have no facilities to secure, yet they're active proponents. So I've been trying to figure out, how do I categorize all these people? Then I see there are people that aren't doing anything because they don't think there's a problem, right? So I've categorized them, and I'm going to share them with you, and you can tell me if you think I'm right or I'm wrong. My wife tells me I'm wrong all the time, and I still don't change my mind. I probably should, because she's usually right. So number one, we have the prognostics, right? Those are the people that have no vested assets, and sometimes they do. Sometimes they're suppliers. Whatever their motivations are, they are telling you that the end is near, the world is falling, and someday, sometime soon, somebody, one of you, somewhere is going to have something really nasty, and there's going to be some catalyst event that's going to cause you to wish you had done something with security, and you had not, right? Is that a fair statement? There are prognostics out there, okay? Some are more vocal than others, but there are prognostics. There are those who are apathetic. Something might happen someday, but probably not to us, and I don't really care. And those are the ones that, it's that catalyst event that's going to be crushing to their organization. And, I feel bad for them, because if they haven't figured out it's going to happen yet, they don't pay attention to much, right? But there are those out there who are just apathetic. So who are they? I see them all the time. I talk to a lot of them. The ones that really, other than the attackers, so I'll go over the attackers. You've got the attackers, right? There's 5 categories I've come up with. The attacker are those that we look out for. Those are the ones who are attempting to compromise your systems for one way, shape, or form. They are the evildoers, right? And I don't mean the guys you hired come in to do it. I mean the ones that are out to do you no good, the attackers. But the ones that and I don't like them. Those are bad guys. But the ones that really tick me off, and if you're in the room and I, pardon my use of the term, piss you off, so be it. The ones that make me really angry are the ones that are neglectful, knowingly neglectful. Those are the guys. I sat in a conference a couple of years ago and the question was asked, is it better to do nothing and then when something happens you're not blamed, or to do something and then have it fail and take some of the responsibility? And the larger part of the room said it's better to do nothing and not take any blame when it's compromised. And I got up and left. Those are the knowingly neglectful people. And I just have to say, if you are that person in this room today, you need to rethink your position. It is better to do something than nothing. It is better to put your foot out and take a stab at solving a problem and protecting your organization, your people, your assets, your intellectual property, than do nothing. If you do nothing, you will fail for sure. I guarantee it. Because if you've done nothing but knowingly done nothing, you have already failed. Whether you look at it that way or not, you've failed. Okay? And then there are those like us. Some of us a little more, some of us a little less. We are the few, the scared as hell, the proactive. Those who are stepping out, looking for solutions, and pushing suppliers, pushing manufacturers to come up with solutions to problems we know are there, asking for, pushing them along. Organizations like ARC saying, look, this is a problem, let's make it more public, let's get more people involved, let's get more suppliers along the road of coming up with products that solve problems, because there's a sincere lack of that type of product today. There's plenty of technology. I have plants full of it. There aren't many of the product I'm using right now, and there needs to be a few more companies making that level of product. So I leave you with that. I appreciate your time, and I hope at least with some of this I've given you something to think about. And if after the fact you'd like any more technical mumbo-jumbo on what we're doing, I'm happy to share it with you. Thank you.